Hello, this is KYC News. We have provided you with relevant and reliable information for the day. First and foremost, we wish him good health and heartfelt desire. Here are the main points. Human rights advocacy and feminist economics. Human rights advocacy and feminist economics. Despite extensive discussion about the interconnectedness of human rights, many continue to separate the work on civil and political rights from that on economic, social, and cultural rights. The goal and the vision I had when I started serving as the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights in 2018 was to eliminate that artificial division. We needed to comprehend and clarify the connections between three crucial areas in order to do this. First, economic, social, and cultural rights. 2. The Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, for which the 2030 Agenda was adopted by the entire UN. 3. The averting of unrest and conflict. Concisely, this meant that it was important to comprehend how economics plays a part in promoting and protecting human rights, as well as vice versa, and how to translate this understanding into official acts. In order to better understand how human rights might influence macroeconomic and microeconomic policy, my office has been enlarging and extending its country-level work and partnerships for more than 2 years. It is even more important today to maintain this focus and to advocate for what my office refers to as an economy that supports human rights. We are clearly at a turning point as evidenced by the socio-economic effects of the pandemic, rising poverty and inequality, debt distress, inflation, climate change, opposition to human rights, particularly against women's rights, and raging conflict, including, but not limited to, the war in Ukraine. Along with calls for reform of an international financial system that many claim is no longer functional, the global economy is experiencing fragmentation and divergence. 60% of workers have lower real incomes than they did prior to the pandemic, and 60% of the world's poorest nations are in debt distress or are at high risk of entering it, according to the UN Global Crisis Response Group on Food, Energy, and Finance, which is presided over by fellow panelist Rebecca Grinspan. These nations, who have little fiscal space, are dealing with currency devaluations as the cost of commodities rises. Many governments will be forced to choose between paying for healthcare, social security, or other rights and debt service if the debt architecture is not changed. More individuals are suffering from existential, famine-like situations and are forced to make difficult survival decisions, especially when choosing between food, medication, and education. Additionally, there is ample evidence of the multiplier impact of hunger on results in health and education. The majority of these realities fall on marginalized and vulnerable groups, such as indigenous people, racial and ethnic minorities, and low-wage employees, as we are all too aware. These categories are disproportionately impacted by women and girls. Colleagues, for the development of transformational economic solutions, your evaluations of the current economic situation, with all of its complexities, opportunities, and problems, are crucial. For a long time, feminist economists have questioned gender-blind economic policies and worked to create solutions to advance equality and combat prejudice. Additionally, you have highlighted the flaws in the dominant economic paradigm, which are causing unaffordable societal costs, instability, and increased institutional distrust. You and I both believe that increased cooperation between feminism economists and human rights experts is essential to creating economies that operate for everyone by making investments in human rights. Designing and executing macro and microeconomic policies that are more just, fair, and equitable requires a solid framework based on human rights. As a result, we must address gender disparity and create budgets that work for everyone, including those who have the least and have fallen behind the most. As a result, one of the most crucial economic policy instruments for facilitating the realization of human rights is a government's budget. However, the majority of countries' budget documents do not adequately incorporate financial obligations and standards related to human rights. The International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights requires member states to make sure that everyone has access to the fundamental elements of these rights, especially during times of crisis. However, social spending frequently falls short of addressing the population's actual needs. Numerous of you have written regarding the negative impact of austerity policies on social spending reductions. While their debt obligations sometimes push out such expenditures, low and middle income nations invest an average of 1/3 of their government spending in social safety, healthcare, and education. National budgets can be an effective tool for advancing equality and the SDGs if they take into account states' duties under international human rights law and provide enough funding to guarantee at least the most basic levels of economic and social rights for everyone. Spending on social programs that emphasize on accessibility, affordability, and quality as well as gender equality and the absence of discrimination enhances livelihoods and reduces inequality. Increasing such investment helps to safeguard and improve the population's general health and standard of living while keeping more kids in school. The best means available to society for fostering resilience is this. Transparency is also crucial. I encouraged citizen involvement in the municipal budget process when I served as president of Chile. All human rights standards call for free, active, and meaningful involvement. This calls for financial transparency, promotes responsibility, and strengthens social cohesion. When rights holders are given the chance to track the money, corruption is reduced and public confidence in the government is increased. Mates, co-workers, how can we strengthen and broaden the body of evidence supporting economic, social, and cultural rights, particularly for disadvantaged groups, in order to promote universal human rights? How can we fairly acknowledge and account for all economic contributions, including those made by the unpaid care industry and the gray economy? In this regard, I'd like to remind everyone that everyone has the right to development, which includes the right to contribute to, take part in, and enjoy development as well as a just distribution of its advantages. How can we more convincingly demonstrate the multiplier impacts of social expenditure on trust and prosperity? As part of my office's expanding efforts in this area, we are assisting governments in establishing human rights-centered, gender-responsive, and evidence-based social protection systems, prioritizing healthcare budgets, and ensuring that both women and men in communities participate in the implementation of social protection and water and sanitation measures. We do this in collaboration with other UN agencies, national human rights institutions, and civil society. On the Southern African Development Community's Model Law on Public Finance Management, for instance, my office collaborated with them. We gave advice on how to invest in the social sector based on human rights and gave suggestions on how to mobilize domestic resources, notably through progressive taxation. We hope that this bill will serve as a model for national parliaments as they strengthen their domestic legislative systems governing public financial management. My office is also assisting Nepal's most disadvantaged female employees, such as domestic and sex workers, in paying the minimal necessary amounts of their legal right to reproductive health care. When compared to nearby public hospitals, sex workers are willing to spend 3 to 4 times more to visit faraway private clinics. The financial burden of stigmatizing and criminalizing particular ways of making a living is crippling. At the international level, my office is lending its support to the Human Rights Council's consideration of the need to adapt human rights-based care and support systems to make them more gender-inclusive and responsive. For these efforts to be successful over time, we need solid partnerships. The development of evidence-based, context-specific, sector-by-sector analyses of the costs of underfunding economic and social rights, for instance, might be the main emphasis of the effort. Economic expansion on its own won't raise all boats. Whether in the fields of care work, the informal sector, or the environment, your contributions to the limitations of present development performance criteria are fundamental and will remain so. The UN Secretary-General is urging the UN system to propose new metrics for gauging a nation's development success. He has also urged us to change the way we perceive and value nature. What we pursue as a group creates what we measure, and what we pursue defines what we measure. Our systems need to place more focus on assessing people's well-being, including their ability to exercise their economic and social rights, rather than economic production. The current situation forces us to develop fresh frameworks and instruments for an economy that promotes human rights. You are in a unique position to influence the work of future generations of economists and shift global governance in the direction of social justice and equality. I am certain that we can overcome this obstacle if we work together, rooted in our shared values. I'm grateful.